Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Training Camp Report. It is Tuesday, August 9th. Day 12 of Chiefs Training Camp has wrapped. So as always, I need to welcome in the editor-in-chief of Arrowhead Pride, the man with the most button-up shirts in Kansas City, Pete Sweeney. Swain, what's happening?
How's it going? What's happening? We're heading into a day off, so I'll be wearing a button up, button down, whatever you want to call it tomorrow.
I need this day off after assistant coach day. There's a lot of pressers today, a lot of stuff to cover.
That's right. No, we got, I think it was 5 assistant coaches, and it's a day I always appreciate. I know the fans probably enjoy the players a little bit more, but these coaches are with these guys and they're constantly evaluating. So sometimes you can take little notes and nuggets. So if you're a diehard fan, I would encourage you to listen from the podium when we do get it up later today.
Yeah, it should be up for you a little bit later on this afternoon. But Pete, I want to ask you about the Chiefs' unofficial depth chart that was released before Saturday's upcoming preseason game. Now, again, this is unofficial, so it's right. Not definitively the way these guys are ranked or laid out on the Chiefs roster, but there was some interesting notes here. John Christian was listed as the backup left tackle, and Mike Dana was listed as the starting defensive end opposite of Frank Clark.
Yeah, and I think that just goes into where you can. The rookies have to earn it. You didn't see that with McDuffie simply because this is a first-round pick the Chiefs traded up for, and when you lose Travarius Ward in free agency, that writing's already on the wall. He is expected to be the one starter, and I think they're challenging with that. George Karlaftis, they're making it earn a little bit, and I think it also speaks to what Mike Dana brings to the table. I really think that they respect Dana and his work ethic and how he's been able to improve since coming to the Chiefs. And I've said it in a couple places, but I'll say it again. I really like that energy where he wants to have 5-6 sacks, pressure the quarterback more than he ever has this year. As a supplemental player, that could really help this defensive line.
Yeah, and again, the depth chart, the unofficial depth chart doesn't mean anything. It could be a totally different rotation when they start this preseason game on Saturday, and it could change multiple times before the season actually starts. But it is a good place to start and to try to get an idea of where these guys are kind of being valued in their roles on the team in the upcoming season.
Yeah, really quickly too, like the Chiefs don't make this chart and hand it over to the PR staff. The PR staff makes it. I know that Mitch Holthus weighs in a little bit on it. Voice of the Chiefs, obviously one of the greater resources when it comes to this team. And then the football side will sign off on it. So they do review it, but it isn't really self-created by them. So it is worth taking everything with a grain of salt. I do think another thing that stood out to me was the fact that Josh Gordon was not among what would be the top 6 wide receivers. And that sort of fits what we've seen at camp, and an unfortunate part of camp, because I felt like Josh was in a good place to maybe make this team. And I feel less and less like that every day.
Yeah, just it's with the young guys that have been making an impact. It feels like it's going to be hard for Josh Gordon to find a spot on this roster, but they did get some good news on Tuesday as Rashaad Fenton took the practice field for the first time this training camp. He is expected to be removed from the PUP, but he'll get worked back in slowly, kind of how they've been working in Carlos Dunlap and some other players who are trying to get healthy. But I think this is a huge win for the Chiefs, getting him on the field before the regular season starts, because I was starting to question it.
Yeah, I'm still unsure if he'll play in that preseason game on Saturday, but he has started the process of getting back into the mix. And we weren't sure, and the Chiefs wouldn't tell us what the timetable was. When they give no timetable, sometimes that's bad news, but as it turned out, returned to practice today. He did one-on-ones, individual, no team scrimmage periods for Fenton just yet. I know that the Chiefs put out some kind of clip of Juju Smith-Schuster basically mossing Fenton, which I don't know if you necessarily need to do that on his first day back here, but he looked like he was moving well. And again, I think you're right. I think like Orlando Brown, like Carlos Dunlap, this will be a ramp-up period back into being able to be among those first-team cornerbacks.
Yeah, we've talked about Rashaad Fenton a lot, and here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, I think it's really important that they get him healthy, because I don't think that you want to start the regular season with 2 rookie cornerbacks in that secondary. It's a tall task for any rookie to start week 1 of an NFL season. for the Chiefs to have two cornerbacks at premium positions in this defense or in this division. With the schedule that they have early season, I think getting Rashaad Fenton back and healthy is absolutely huge for them. So it's good to see him take the practice field.
Yeah, and I think he's the third cornerback on this team. I think ideally for them, it's L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, and then in the nickel, it's Fenton coming in, Sneed sliding in. They also feel like McDuffie can do that eventually, but it does seem like also they're making sure he's comfortable outside first before really mixing him into that role, even in training camp. So we'll see if he gets some looks in that regard on Saturday. Eager to see what he can do. And then when it comes to your fourth quarter cornerback, the first cornerback that would be off the bench, Chiefs are rotating a lot of guys with the first team defense. And Najee Johnson was added to that mix today. We had seen Jalen Watson. We had seen Joshua Williams working there. Joshua Williams the most, then Jalen Watson, and now Johnson. I think the Chiefs are just seeing what they have. They're optimistic about all of these cornerbacks. And then you also have Lonnie Johnson floating out there as well. And, as we're talking, it's probably exactly why we saw DeAndre Baker released waves, because they feel good with the players they have here in camp.
Yeah. So we know they've got some depth there in the secondary, but there is a lot of use. So getting Rashaad Fenton back and healthy is going to be huge for them. I want to ask you about Nickell Hardman. And, we've spent so much time talking about Sky Moore, MVS, Juju Smith-Schuster, and the roles that they're going to have in this offense in the upcoming season. But it seems like Nickell Hardman has really kind of hit his stride this week at training camp. It seems like every day I'm seeing highlights of Patrick Mahomes hitting Nickell Hardman deep down the field.
Yeah, and again, it was an interesting offseason for Nickell in the sense of the roller coaster. But yeah, it is seeming more and more like the go-to pass catchers on this team are going to be Travis Kelce, then Juju Smith-Schuster, and then I think MVS and Nickell are right behind those guys. We'll see how many balls go to each one. Earlier in camp, going into OTAs, if you follow Arrowhead Pride, you knew how optimistic I was about MVS maybe filling a bigger role. And I still have optimism for MVS, but there have been other receivers that are getting close to him. Like you talk about Nickell Hardman. I do think Nickell Hardman had a good week, but I also think that Sky Moore has really showed out when he has had the ball in his hands. So the Chiefs designed this in the offseason. They want it to be a well-balanced offense beyond Travis Kelce. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is next in the pecking order. And then I think all three of these receivers could be in the same yardage range, the same yardage total when it comes to production on this team, which is what they wanted to do. They wanted to make this offense more balanced. They wanted to win with Patrick Mahomes, making these guys look good. And I think we're starting to see what they designed sort of come to fruition here as we enter day 12, and Thursday will be day 13 of training camp.
It's really, and at this point, the Chiefs, like you mentioned, they want to spread the ball around. They don't need Nickell Hardman to be a true number one wide receiver. I think all you need to see from him this season is just a level of consistency that we've been chasing his entire career so far, kind of like we saw from him at the end of the season last year. And if he can do that for an entire season, that's a good thing for Nickell Hardman. It's a good thing for the Kansas City Chiefs, and it'll probably get him paid in the offseason. So you just need more consistency from Nickell Hardman, because we know he can be a playmaker for this offense.
I don't think Nickell Hardman is going to be 1,000 receiving yard receiver. However, I do feel like 1,000 scrimmage yards is on the table, meaning maybe it's 600 to 700 yards through the air. Maybe it's 3 to 4 on the ground and some of these orchestrated looks. And so that is exciting, right? Because especially for Nickell, you look at what Christian Kirk was able to earn simply never having a 1,000 yard year in his career. I think you have that ultimate motivation built in for Nickell as well. And so that's what makes him an exciting player to watch here in 2022.
I want to ask you about Carlos Dunlap, who's been getting more involved and has been really ramping it up this week with the Chiefs in training camp. So did he sack Chad Henne today? Doesn't he know he's a veteran? You're not supposed to sack the quarterbacks in training camp practice.
Yeah, he came around. It looked like he came around the left end, so the right edge if you're on the offensive side, and got to Henne. And I don't know if my fellow 32/33-year-old had a brain fart. He's been he's had a lot of years, and he hasn't played since last year. But he sort of touched Henne's shoulder, and Henne was on the ground. And we were far away, so we really couldn't hear, but Henny got right up. Henny, don't forget, Henny's a 10-year veteran himself in his own right. Henny got up and said something to him. It looked like there was a little bit of jawing, but you can't do that if you're Carlos. And Joe Cullen, the defensive line coach, after the practice said he loved the rep, but you can't touch the quarterback. And yeah, so Dunlap, for lack of better words, sat out the next series, and then he was back at the following one. So.
Thankfully, it wasn't Patrick Mahomes, but Carlos knows better than that at this point. Can't be sacking Chad Henne in the practice, but it is good that he is getting those reps, and we'll see how the Chiefs choose to deploy him on Saturday against the Chicago Bears. Last thing, Pete, Dave Toub did officially confirm Isaiah Pacheco, rookie running back, is their starting kick returner, and they expect him to. He's already won that role basically with a couple of weeks of camp left.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? Because that basically confirms that the Chiefs are keeping Pacheco if they see him in a myriad of roles here. And man, that's exciting. It's a lazy day on Saturday, noon kick, but I think a lot of Kansas Cityans are going to be tuning in. And a lot of the reason is even past number 24, Sky Moore, even past number 21, Trent McDuffie. It's what can the new number 10 do? We knew what the old number 10 can do. What is this new number 10 going to do, both as a kick returner and then on the offensive side when he does get the ball in his hands? Because it's been impressive here at Chiefs training camp. And then I think when you look at the punt returner, and this was something I wanted to establish with Dave Toub, which is why I asked him about it. I think ideally this team doesn't want to see Hardman as its punt returner. And the thought process behind that is if he returns a punt, then he's going to have to miss his first play on what would be the offense. And so that is what went into Tyreek Hill losing that role when he was still here in Kansas City. I think they see the same thing for Hardman, but they need an option, someone that they feel can be reliable catching punts. Sky Moore, it's been okay. He's had a couple of these punt drops. McDuffie, Dave Toub said, has been the best punt catcher beyond Nickell Hardman. And I wonder, are they going to have a top cornerback being their punt returner? But it seems like it is indeed not off the table at this point. So that's another point to watch as we do enter Saturday's game against the Bears.
Yeah, it's just tough for Sky Moore on that return spot. We talked about it yesterday on the editor's show. He didn't return kicks in college. Like, it's just not something he's done. So while he is a gifted player, to expect him to be able to do that in the NFL, it's probably just not going to happen. And it sounds like Dave Toub probably agrees, unless he just absolutely flashes something this weekend or in the preseason. Actually, I do want to ask you about, so Justin Reid is making the rounds yesterday. Justin Reid's out on the practice field drilling these long field goals. And then apparently he got an opportunity to do it like in an actual simulated situation today, and he just absolutely shanked it. Is that right?
Steve, you said last question. I was walking over to get a snow cone, and I thought you were going to close it.
I'm sorry. I had to ask about the Justin Reid field goal. That's what people want to hear about, Pete.
I am not lying to you when I say that Justin Reid kicked the worst field goal I have ever seen at practice today. And I attended high school football games. I covered when I was a student. I covered Syracuse football at many levels. This was the worst field goal I had ever seen. It basically went off his foot and went directly left. Look, when he thinks there are no cameras on him and he's just having fun out there, I mean, this guy's drilling 65-yard field goals. They put him in there at the end of practice or the middle of practice, I guess I should say. And I think the pressure got to him a little bit. So I'm sorry to say that Chiefs still may have to keep Elliott Fry's phone number handy if they can.
Yeah, it's safe to say Justin Reid is not going to be your emergency kicker if something happens to Harrison Butker. But he's Pete Sweeney. You can follow him on Twitter at PG Sween. If you want to listen to the Chiefs press conferences in their entirety, you will be able to do that here in the very near future at the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network on From the Podium. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing on Apple and Spotify. No practice tomorrow, so we will talk to you guys on Thursday for day 13 of Chiefs training camp.